compared to what I feel when I'm with you. Oh, baby, giving up my ghost for you. Now I'm seeing through. You give me a feeling so strong. I know you've been treating yourself wrong. So let me get to you. Oh, baby, I'ma love you differently. I'll give you electricity, give it to you. And even if I could, I wouldn't know you. And I would stop the world for you, you know. I wanna let you know I'll never let this feeling go. This love has no ceiling. I can't deny. Even if I could, I wouldn't know you. GM, everyone. Welcome to 9 o'clock live at the Noun Square, playing some electric music for our Noun number 478, the electrical outlet. Just going to take a few minutes to get situated here before FOMO. How's everybody doing?
Great.
All right.
I'm excited for today.
Yeah, me too.
We're like
it's going to be
Oprah
interesting.
Winfrey here. We're like Oprah Winfrey here, giving everybody Discord channels.
You get a Discord, and you get a Discord. Few people I've invited up to the stage here, so if it's not working, you may have to go out and come back. 142 and Woody sent a couple invites over to you, Ryan as well. If you're just joining the room, please retweet us. If you hit the little bubble on the bottom right there, retweet the room, let people know what we're doing here, and if they'd like to come hear this important conversation, they can join us. 41 should be joining us here shortly. Looks like we are going to FOMO, everybody. So let's go to FOMO, and then we'll go to 4156 when he gets on here with us. So let's go to FOMOnouns.wtf, and we'll play together. What are we looking for today, guys?
FOMO Nouns. We are live.
Bubblegum.
Bubblegum?
Wow, we are already in FOMO.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
We got a
here we
little
go.
close to FOMO here by mistake, but that's okay. Let's jump right into it. And then we'll have more time afterwards to chat.
Bubblegum.
Ooh,
bubblegum,
business
bubblegum.
pyramid. That's a pyramid scheme.
Looks like we're already getting an attempting to settle on my end.
Yeah.
It does say that, actually. Did we get sniped by the bot right away?
I think we might have. Well, but maybe not.
No,
Maybe
it
not,
didn't look
maybe
like it
not.
took. The
Not
pyramid
yet.
scheme wasn't meant to be, so.
The pyramid scheme. Do we have cherries?
I don't know. Where's Prof Werder when you need her?
Baseball. Let's go.
I like the red eyes.
I love a double noggle shirt.
We know Woody wants the baseball, that's for sure.
I like the baseball.
No.
Oh, infinite.
retainer.
We got a
Minter
mythic,
retainer
so
for 41.
Retainers.
infinite retainers all day with the classic red noggles.
Oh, it
Here
is.
we
It's
go.
attempting to settle as well.
We're gonna get it.
With the
We're
bots.
gonna
We got over 75 people
No.
in
No,
there.
it didn't work.
Yay,
Twitter
pipe!
today.
Yay, pipe.
I do like the pipe
Yay,
with these
pipe.
noggles, but not with that.
You know what kind of
not with
you know
that
what
shirt.
kind of pants he's wearing? That
Yeah, it
pipe?
kind of looked like the pipe was, the noggles were part of the pipe there. It was cool.
He's wearing denim.
Well done.
Welcome, 41. We're just playing FOMO here, and then we'll jump into a chat with you. Thanks for joining.
Hey, yeah, I'm
Oh, Dino Chain.
Cool.
Dino's on chain.
Oh,
GM.
Oh,
GM.
we might get this one.
I think Ryan wanted this one. He must be Sybil attacking it. He wants the dino on chain.
Ooh, I like this watermelon.
So clean.
Watermelon's kind of
I'm voting yes for this one.
Watermelon with matching shirt.
It's like wearing a hoodie.
I love how the
We might
bot,
get this one.
Yes,
I love how the
70.
bot keeps going even after it's trying to settle. Was that like 70?
Yeah.
Oh, you know, it's allowing me to click it up multiple times.
Really?
Job done.
It's not working
Yeah,
for
I
me.
think.
Hey,
I think
the
so.
owler has been trying for a noun. No, that would have been a good one for him, but it's gone. It's interesting. The last few times I thought it should have settled, but it didn't. So I don't know if FOMO's broken again here.
There's definitely something up because usually the buttons get grayed out and you can't use them.
Mhm.
But just then,
Oh, the blended.
yeah, I can keep clicking them and then it grays out.
Interesting. Well, I definitely
Very
see them
weird.
keeping going up. Oh, this is a great scale now.
I'm about voting this.
Yeah.
This is gorgeous.
Go.
That totally rocks.
Nice one. Will.
That's a rock.
Well done.
That's a rock from the before times right there.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I was not.
Do you
Rock
brush-
of Ages, if you will.
Sorry.
For the love
Where's
of,
NG?
It
for
looks
the love of Christ,
We need NG up
you guys
here.
are brutal with the co-host stuff.
That's a kind of cool box.
Look at that box.
That is a beautiful box.
I'm on
That-
an airplane and I just scream that out loud. Look at that box.
What could go wrong?
Oh man.
Sounds kind of sexual to me.
Ooh. Are those watermelon noggles?
Oh, I think they are, but why
I
don't
think they are, yeah.
why don't they match the watermelon?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh man. Dill
They turned it
Cosby
down
logo.
into a pickle.
That's Mr. Dill
Okay.
to you.
I think we
You
should
got
do a
that
full
Hulk
week of
outfit?
only business nouns. Just
the
only
pickle
the
mouth is so good.
Wow, he's clean.
It's time for
Pizza
cheese.
Pizza time.
That's
Yeah.
a good noun for the 9 o'clock show, I think.
Really is.
What, pizza time?
Are you talking about our cheesy sense of humor?
Da-da,
That's
da-da,
right.
da-da, 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 da-da.
Pope King.
The
Why?
grenade.
90. Gonna hit
You have to
100.
get this one.
100.
Got over
Somehow we got
100.
100 votes.
It just
Hundred.
What is
settled,
going
right?
on here?
It just
Look at those
settled, right?
blended noggles, man.
Gonna
Oh,
settle.
yeah.
It has
The
to.
blended
He's
on
got
the
like a
hard hat
little
is so
Hulk
nice.
Hogan mustache.
Yeah. Handlebar mustache.
For
Oh,
one
Oh, I
context,
like this one a
context,
lot.
over the past week, we've been dealing with this bot, and it keeps manipulating FOMO in different ways every day, so we never know what we're up against lately.
Where is that weasel honk? Where is he at?
Where's that? Where's that weasel? Oh, a bloody smile.
I'm voting
For
yes
everyone
for
just
this
joining
one.
us, I did pin to the top. We are on FOMOnouns.wtf helping to pick the next noun.
We're trying anyway.
We're trying.
Do we know if anyone's working on a kind of anti-Sybil FOMO?
So NG said he is working on it, and he had a bit of trouble reaching Forager at first, and I guess they did connect recently, so I think they are working on a solution of some kind. But in the meantime, this is what we're dealing with.
Yeah. You know, those numbers are way off.
Toady, you want to just settle it?
I had to do that once before, yeah.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah.
Look at this guy.
Look,
It's a very nice factory.
It's all 4 and 1 down, and it's attempting to settle.
So cool.
I've seen
But
it attempting to settle like 7 times this round. I don't really understand what could be the problem. I wonder if
treasure chest.
I wonder if they're trying some anti-Sybil stuff and it's causing
It's been
problems.
settling on the noun heads that haven't been minted yet. That's what it's been doing lately, remember?
It did a few, but then it minted some that had, so that
that was the second outlet we got yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Honk's
Greasy
conversation
Sasquatch, oh my god.
was based around trying to stall the auction by making FOMO never reach consensus. So maybe he's perfected the bot to do that, if it is Honk.
Oh my god, these are insane nouns today.
I know.
Yeah.
They're all
So many good ones.
Speaking of which, we do have NG here, so I don't know if NG wants to give us an update on what's going on.
Yeah,
at the same time, don't show your hand just in case the person's not listening.
Yeah, JM guys. Sorry for my voice. I just got sick in addition to all the hell that's happening. So the thing is, as I understand, Fraser actually put live some updates, but what got around really fast with some other methods. So so I'm still looking into that because I will be chatting with Forager because he has access to the backend and he can see what actually happening because it's a bit hard to just visually do that. So I'm working on that, and hope we actually can battle all what's happening. But this guy is kind of like catching up really fast, I would say. Yeah. So.
But what could be happening here where we seem to be getting consensus often, and it just won't settle? Any ideas?
I have no idea actually, because I don't have access to the backend and I can't say what's actually happening because I watch
voting down on the mustard
for the transactions on Etherscan and there's nothing. So it seems backend doesn't send a transaction actually. So but I can't say actually anything precise about what's actually happening because it's
so,
like
NG,
my guess as yours.
Are you saying it's a lonely man with nothing better to do with his time? Is that what you're assuming?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm for sure.
Yep, I figured. That's what I thought too, buddy.
Cody, you're saving us.
I'm trying. I did.
Oh, that's a good one.
This is a good one.
Did you get a Godfather?
Oh, did we get bonsai?
Sorry, I just had to get that off my chest so that we could continue.
Jeez.
Okay, that
Well,
one was good.
I did it for the culture. Something's obviously broken on FOMO as much as we love it, and we want to make sure that we can have some time to chat here with our guest, 4156. So thank you, everyone, for joining us here. And I'm not sure what's going on with FOMO. Hopefully it'll be fixed soon, but still fun to watch all the nouns as they go by. Wanted to welcome 4156, one of the co-founders of Nouns DAO. This week, there's been a lot of discussion around the Nouniverse with hints that the official Nouns Discord may be shut down. A lot of questions coming in about this, and we thought it would be awesome and very helpful to get the information straight from the deep-fried horse's mouth, as it were. And so without further ado, welcome 4156 to talk to us about that today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So for starters, some might think that this is sort of coming out of the blue, but it's not really. It's something you've been thinking about a lot and even talking about for a long time. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's lots of kind of context for these discussions, and you know, part of the context for these discussions is that a lot of discussions in the Nouns universe happen in private and not in public, which leads to scenarios like this where things kind of appear to be coming out of the blue. So, you know, like kind of almost immediately after we launched the project, there was some kind of like internal debate among the Nouners as to whether there was, you know, there could be such a thing as a kind of official Nouns Discord. And we actually ended up kind of like changing the name of the Discord from Nouns to Nouners to Nouns, you know, on a few separate occasions. And so, you know, I think, and we can get kind of more into it, but sort of like the origins of this conversation are that, you know, Nouns is, I think, much more kind of sensical as a protocol than an organization. And in this context, like it's as sensical to have an official Nouns Discord as it is to have like an official Bitcoin or Ethereum Discord, right? And so I think in hindsight, I wish we would have called it the Nouners Discord, and I think that would have given us a lot more discretion to kind of curate what went on in there. But you know, in the context of what it's become, I think there are lots of kind of different and fairly subtle reasons that it makes sense to end it now, and happy to get into those as well.
Yeah, for sure. Can you expand a little bit on the difference between a protocol and an organization? I think you had a tweet recently where you said, you know, build protocols, not companies. For those in the audience that don't really know what the difference is or what you mean by that, can you expound a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, you know, there are probably like lots of subtle differences, and maybe the very kind of interesting thing about Ethereum is that it kind of blurs the lines in the sense that you can kind of architect these arbitrary primitives, right? And so some of them look very, very protocol-like, and some of them look very organization-like. And then there's this whole kind of spectrum in between. But I would say probably the two defining features for Nouns that make it more like a protocol than an organization are, one, that it's kind of completely flat, right? There's no boss. There's a bunch of different stakeholders and different kinds of stakeholders. I'm not sure why I'm waving on my avatar. I didn't do that. There's a bunch of stakeholders and different kinds of stakeholders. And then I think the other feature that makes it a protocol is that it's permissionless. And can everyone still hear me, by the way?
Yes. Yeah. You're
Okay.
Yeah.
100% certified, not rugged.
Okay, good. And so I think probably the permissionlessness is the most kind of important property of kind of protocolness as it pertains to the Discord discussion, because, you know, it's sort of it doesn't make sense to have an organization where you can't control who the members are, who the participants are, and then also to create a kind of organizational structure where you're forced to work with the people. Or not forced, I'll say coerced to work with the people that you had no kind of no hand in choosing to work with, right? So that's where kind of the structure of the Discord that looks a bit more like something that's designed for an organization meets the structure of the protocol that's, you know, or the structure of the project that is designed to be much more of a protocol, and then there's some kind of friction that emerges at that meeting place.
Perfect. Thank you. You had another tweet. Well, you've talked a lot, I guess, over the past weeks about how the official Nouns Discord is like a subsidization of vibes. I pinned a tweet above there where you had a funny meme, a Powell-esque meme. What do you mean by the Discord subsidizing vibes?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think a lot of the kind of arguments against deleting the Discord are that, people love it there. It's a great space. It's a fun space, which I fully agree with. I don't disagree with that at all. And I think there's a sense in which it's a shame to lose that. But the fact remains that like the reason it is that way is that, there's a bunch of people that are putting in a bunch of work to make it that way. And I think that work that is done has these sort of like unintended consequences, right? Like subsidies always have these kinds of like negative externalities, this kind of like fallout that is typically like much more nuanced than the thing that's being subsidized, right? Like, I don't know, for example, you could say, oh, let's all put like ethanol in our cars, and everyone's like, oh, that's great, corn is so green. And you can make this very easy argument that that's a great thing to do, but all the way down the line now, there's someone in a country halfway around the world who can't afford to eat because you're putting corn in your gas tank or whatever. I think the sort of like the vibes that are created in that space kind of come at a cost, and that cost is having a marketplace for vibes, right? A marketplace for vibes where people can compete to create spaces that are kind of much more varied and diverse and interesting, and importantly, kind of give power to the cultural creators in the ecosystem. And I think that is one of the things that we're currently subsidizing.
Okay, and then following on to that, you mentioned as well that the problem with subsidies is that the benefits are always less nuanced than the cost. That's a direct quote from your tweet as well. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so in this case, again, the benefits are very obvious. The benefits are the vibes, but I think you have to ask the question, like, what are the costs? And the costs are that like creating a space sort of creates these sort of subtle perverse incentives, right? Like, so you have this place that's called the official one, right? It's the official Discord of the protocol, and people feel compelled to be in there because it's official. But one of the problems is that it's Discord, and there's kind of no attention meritocracy like on Twitter or Farcaster, where typically the people with the most useful things to say get the most attention. And of course, if you don't like what they have to say, you can unfollow them. You can't unfollow people in Discord. So you have this space that you're kind of compelling everyone to be in, again, in the context of a permissionless organization where you can't choose who's in there. And in this space, you can't unfollow anyone. So you create the space where really like the loudest and the most kind of argumentative people who don't have a platform elsewhere are kind of able to thrive. And there's a sense in which you're kind of like feeding the reasonable people to the unreasonable ones because you're forcing them all to be in there, right? And so I think that's just one of the kind of subtle issues that you create when you have this official space.
That makes sense.
Sorry, everybody. That's me. No.
You're the unreasonable one?
Usually.
Not who a lot of people were thinking of, I don't think.
Typically.
142, you had some thoughts as well around this. Did you want to share your opinions on what's going on? If you're in a place where you can talk.
Yeah, so I totally agree that it's about creating competition. And basically, I think we're going to see, and we're already seeing kind of a Cambrian explosion of creativity around how we can be as a community and how we can communicate. And there's more people that have influence on how to coordinate. And there's like specific discords for different topics. And so it's not in the hands of a few on how we should be communicating. So I think it's really great to open it up to the market and see what comes out of it. And so it's kind of evolutionary, and we're enabling the best to come up.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing your perspective as well. 41, we've had a lot of folks in the community sort of scared, for lack of a better term, sort of saying, where will we congregate? Where will we be able to find other builders? How will we find friends in the Nouniverse? What would you say to those people who are nervous about this impending closure of the Discord?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think one, I would say that it's just a Discord server. Like if the project kind of can't survive us killing a Discord server, then it probably doesn't deserve to survive, right? Like there are people in the world, including some people in this room, that are like facing actual risks and hardship at the moment, and like I think we shouldn't kind of lose sight of like how kind of minimal the risk of experimentation is here, right? So like even given a sort of like 50-50 uncertainty, and I think the probability is much greater than that this works out very well, but even given like a 50-50 uncertainty, the kind of cost of experimentation in this context is so low that it does make sense to experiment. I guess to more directly address your question, like I think markets are very good and networks are very good, and there's a lot of very smart people in this space who care, and I think in the absence of like providing people with the space to meet, they're going to find their own spaces to meet, and interesting things are going to happen there. And I think that's the whole reason to do it, right? Like if we kind of like hinted that we wanted to move in this direction, and like no one said anything, and there was no pushback, right? And like everyone, like it was just silence, and everyone's like, okay, the project's dead. I think that would be one thing. That would be a compelling reason to not shut it down. But the fact that everyone cares so much, I think, is evidence that they are going to get together and find new ways to communicate, which is exactly what we want. And I think it's going to produce a lot of very interesting and fruitful outcomes in the long run. So
I've had that same thought, because I think a lot of NFT projects, if they killed the Discord, they'd kill the project, to be quite honest, because a lot of them are really dependent on that centralized source of truth. But you haven't seen that seem to be the case after these announcements. So instead, people are creating new Discords. They're inviting people to new Discords a mile a minute. So I think that Cambrian explosion that 142 talked about is already starting to happen, and the Discord hasn't even been killed.
That's right. I think that's exactly what we want to see. And like even okay, so like leave Discord aside and look at like some of the other things that are happening in the space, right? Like you have teams like Agora or Brian who's building his discourse killer. The subsidy directly affects them and their kind of ability to aggregate attention and kind of brains around the projects that they're building. So, killing the Discord is actually really, really good for the builders in the community that are building kind of competing solutions, because ending the subsidy means that they'll get more business, right? And they have a higher probability of getting funded in the future. And it really just makes for a much healthier ecosystem in the long run.
Yeah, to that end, I just posted above there a tweet from Yitong, who said exactly that. The builder of Agora, who said, as a builder, I'm weirdly excited by Punk 4156's intent to delete the Discord. It opens up a lot of new territory for experimentation and makes clients like Nouns Agora even more interesting in the long run. Does anyone else here who've joined us on stage have a question that you have yourself, or that was brought to you by anyone in the community while we have 41 here with us?
Yeah, I'll go. Toshi just brought it up in the Discord. So 4156, if people want to get a hold of the Nouners, basically you go to the Discord now, right? With all the subsidies in different communities, where will that, I know you don't want to say the word central, but where would that place be where you can get a hold of all the Nouners and get that feedback still?
Yeah, that's a good question, and probably something we need to do some thinking about as a group. I know personally, I'm certainly committed to like spending time making the rounds and visiting all of these communities that are popping up, which in some sense will make me kind of more accessible than in the quote unquote official Discord, where typically like there's just so many things coming at me that I tend to kind of avoid it as a space a little bit. So I think, you know, us kind of continuing to kind of make the rounds, you know, and again, not trying to compare the scale of this or anything in any sense, but, you know, like the way Vitalik goes to DevCon, or, you know, these kind of community leaders have an ability to kind of show up in the right places and try to kind of incentivize some thought leadership. So I think we're certainly committed to continuing to do that. And then, of course, I think there's just a ton of value in having these conversations publicly, right? I think one of the biggest problems with the Discord is that we sort of silo a lot of the really interesting conversation that happens, and forget about like the fact that there's a private channel in the Discord, but just the siloing of that conversation into the Discord itself means that there's tons of people on Twitter and Farcaster and other public platforms that like are just not going to see the information. So like if you tweet and you message me, I'm you know, like I turn off DMs because there's just too much spam. But like if you have something interesting to say on Twitter, I'll always respond. And when we have that conversation in public, there's just so many more people that will see it and benefit from it than otherwise.
Could you foresee a time where a Nouner call happens on like a Twitter Spaces?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a sense, there's one happening right now, right?
Yeah.
I think again, moving all of that conversation into public, and again, moving it onto a platform where there's a kind of attention meritocracy, right? Like if you have a following that values what you have to say, and you're hosting the space, and you know everyone will listen to you. I think that is a very, very healthy thing. It moves the conversation into public, and it moves the conversation into a marketplace where the people who are kind of, you know, have the most interesting things to say are able to kind of aggregate a following. And I think that's just way healthier for the ecosystem.
I love that. We have Victor Solomon here who has his hand up. You have a question, Victor?
Yeah, quick one. I know this has been on your mind for a minute, but was there a moment that set you over the edge to really want to get this thing done?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few moments. It's been building for a long time, but you know, like if there was maybe one straw, it was probably the conversation about, you know, should there be a women's channel in the official Discord, and like there's basically no kind of winning there, right? Like, I think it's great if there's kind of like a women in nouns Discord. You know, there's a space where people can go and congregate, but like having to make a decision one way or another in the official space actually sort of like says something about the protocol or the culture, which again, I don't think we should be kind of like forced to make those decisions at like a quote unquote organizational level. So I think that was an important catalyst, but again, I think there's kind of like dozens of reasons to do this. And typically that is the case. Like, you know, whenever I've kind of come out and kind of made, I think, fairly unintuitive calls about CC0 or royalties or whatever, like these things take a lot of effort, right? It takes a lot of my attention. It's stressful. I'm kind of like making these forceful arguments in public for long periods of time. And so like, typically there's got to be a pretty compelling reason to do that. And usually there's a lot of factors that have kind of added up to kind of create those situations.
Yeah, totally sympathetic to that pressure that you must have been on under all those things. I guess the last question I'd have there related to conversations happening in private. Are you worried at all that the private conversations will become even more private and the back rooms will get even darker at this point?
I mean, I think that's certainly a risk, but I think if the kind of cultural conventions in the community are to do things in public, I think that will have like it will be a pretty strong forcing function around kind of what's considered acceptable in the community, right? So like the more things that happen in public and the more kind of the more attention is aggregated in public, and the more kind of thought leaders are public about their thoughts about nouns, like presumably there's some correlation with kind of opinions and votes that go along with those things, right? And so I think we can create kind of cultural norms around things happening in public such that backroom deals that make their way on chain are typically like voted down or kind of not looked favorably upon. I mean, I think there is some place for private conversations around sensitive issues. I don't know kind of how those work in the context of a DAO. I'd say almost every single instance of that we've seen in the history of the project has like been kind of more negative than positive. So it may well be the case that these organizations just work best when everything happens in public.
Thank you. Tosha, you had a question?
Yes, I'm curious too, like if you think almost like sub DAOs or any of the Nouners sub DAOs and larger communities that may have a Discord or a central place where they are, if they should almost be like following suit as well and start following that trend of having these discussions in public, and maybe all team meetings are in public or something. I'm not sure if you think that that should happen as quickly, or maybe should their audiences grow a little bit. I just wondered your personal thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I certainly think it doesn't hurt to do things in public. I think those kind of sub communities are different for the reason that they're not trying to kind of like impose like a kind of totalitarian vision on the rest of the ecosystem, right? Like the fact that everyone just cares so much about what happens in the official space is the real problem. And once the space is unofficial, again, like we can let the market decide. So if it turns out that doing things in public kind of aggregates the most attention and creates the most value for the ecosystem, then presumably those spaces will win. And if it turns out that I'm wrong and doing things in private is more valuable, then those spaces will win. So I think that the benefit of again, it not having to come from like a place of central authority is that we can try all the methods and let the market decide what's best.
We've got Adrian here who asked to come on stage and may have a question. He's got his hand up. Go ahead, Adrian.
Hey, just wanted to say that I really appreciate everything you guys have done, 4 and 5, 6, especially, obviously. I think it's, this is a pretty big change, and I think a lot of us just got back from DevCon. So, one of the things that I think we might want to, I'm kind of curious if you've thought about is that, if we do lose the Discord, right? Like, I see a lot of talk about this kind of dichotomy between if we delete it, then we're going to have more stuff in the public. But I think previously Victor also mentioned, like, it might just make things more private and less accountable too, because I'm kind of reminded of what happened in Consensus in 2018, 2019, where, the lack of structure actually drove a lot more backroom dealings and things were happening without a lot of transparency. So, it's something that I think, we don't want to rush into, but at the same time, I get the sense that everyone, there's a lot of big names in the Nouns community that's for this decision, and there's no real discussion about the negatives, potential negatives, and I don't want to be too negative either. Like I'm definitely open to talking about these ideas, but I think it's important to kind of get to both sides before we rush into something on this kind of topic.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm happy to talk about the other side. I certainly have spent a lot of time thinking about it too. I mean, and yeah, the consensus kind of point is an interesting one. Again, I think the only sort of defense against that happening is like a set of cultural norms, right? That like Nouns is about doing things in public, and that it becomes kind of like difficult to access the treasury via kind of backroom dealings. Yeah, I mean, of course, some of the negatives are that like the vibes are very good in the Discord, and we're not sure if those are going to be able to be recreated elsewhere, right? Like it could go wrong. It's possible, like it's possible that one of the things in crypto I think I've experienced over the years is that like it's always earlier than you think it is, right? Like I think probably like 5 years ago, I thought crypto was more mature as an ecosystem than I do now, and certainly to the extent that that's true for the Nouns ecosystem, like maybe it's too early to do this, it could well be the case that in the context of that earliness, like one of the things that people are buying into is like the community vibe, right? Like you could imagine that Noun prices go down significantly, to the extent that like people were buying Bored Apes because they got to go to Ape Fest. Maybe people were buying Nouns because they wanted to get into the Discord. All of that said, I think that ends up being like a very local maximum, right? And like in my mind, it is kind of more of a reason to move on from that phase of the history of the space and the project, because like if we're just selling like some analog to like Ape Fest concert tickets, like what are we even doing? And so again, I think those are some of the risks, right? Like number go down, attention go down, and maybe it's a bear market, and the feedback loop doesn't cause it to recover. But I do think there's reason to be optimistic based on kind of the response we've seen so far.
I'll come to you in a second there, Ben. I just wanted to say something more about what Adrian just said. He alluded a little bit to the timeline about maybe not rushing into things. Have you thought about timeline? Is this something that you're thinking will happen in days, weeks, months, or is that something that's still being discussed by Nouners?
Yeah, I mean, Nouners and I have been discussing this for a very long time. Like when was the right time? I think the place that we're in right now is probably weeks, but we're going to have another couple calls to discuss it and figure it out. I think that, like, I wouldn't call it danger, but like there's some level of like it being a bit suboptimal to indicate that it's going to happen and then leave the Discord kind of like lingering around, because there's an opportunity for, I don't know, people to oppose it, the people who oppose it to kind of engage in some FUD, or kind of use the kind of the end of the Discord as like maybe the Discord post announcement has like some perverse set of incentives that we're not aware of, and it's bad for the project. So I think like ideally we archive the space, and ideally we don't, like, it doesn't get deleted without telling anyone, so that people can kind of like have some time to form other communities. But I think most of that can happen. Again, we're just creating Discord servers and like Farcaster and Twitter accounts. Like most of that can happen in a matter of like a week or two, and then we should move on from there.
Do it live, 56. Do it right now. Do it live.
I did joke about that in a tweet earlier.
Where's the soundboard?
Ben, you had a question.
Yeah, so like the talk about archiving it, because I personally think there's a lot of value in keeping an archive of the Discord. I'm just curious if you've put much thought into how you would archive that, like in what format, or if like, do you build an exact clone of Discord that's non-functional, just like a read-only clone or something, or I've just been thinking about the different formats that it could be archived.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, like it's not my specialty, but I would assume that we can just set the permissions to read only and leave it read only for a while. And I don't know, maybe there are some kind of like internet archaeologists that want to kind of translate what is read only into kind of a more permanent form, whether that's screenshots or, I don't know, IPFS or something like that. I mean, certainly everything that happened in there is probably not noteworthy, but there are some kind of sections that we want to keep. So I would think read only would kind of let anyone have an opportunity to do that. I think there's also some sense that like Discord is probably does not want to kind of like have that sort of like data persisting on their servers forever. So eventually I would expect that something would happen to it. So read only should give us like months or years to kind of go in and say what we want in other places.
Yeah, some Discord archaeology.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think after thinking about it a lot myself, I think like my kind of most desired outcome would be like a web client that's just read only. So it looks like and feels like you're using Discord, but it's just like a read only Discord, but it's just a website, but feels like Discord, because then you've got it's kind of just like being able to go back in history and see it in the same format as if you showed up today and decided to scroll back to the start of every channel and figure out what happened and how everything happened.
Like a Wayback Machine for Discord.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. I think there's a lot of value in that.
Interesting. Okay, we got another question here from Joshua Fisher, and then we will have to start to wind it down. We have a hard stop at 2 p.m. Go ahead, Joshua.
Sure. I was just curious, like, as we transition into these different places, if you have any thoughts or opinions on like what's a good type of place for us to go and talk about proposals. Like, does proposal talk move to a separate Discord? Does it move to do we use Discourse for that primarily moving forward, or if you had any opinion on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one thing that I think is kind of hopeful is like the Nouns AI team maybe Joel cares, maybe others that come along. Like we'll now have a sort of marketplace to incentivize like inter Discord or like inter sub DAO, inter organizational communication. So it would be, I mean, it'd be very interesting if we saw some tools emerge for kind of like propagating those discussions kind of between spaces. Certainly, like the discourse is still there as a piece of kind of like centralized, quote unquote, official infrastructure, and I think it's probably too early to discontinue that. And of course, there's a whole kind of interesting conversation about the timing of kind of discontinuing any of these subsidies. But I think for now, like discourse will be one of the places that happens naturally, which is probably good because the kind of like stateful and just like slower nature of discussion that happens there is going to be useful.
It's kind of like an awesome vision too, though. Like Rocco, like you could go to let's just call it Rocco.wtf and be like, what is the Nouniverse saying about this thing, and then it brings up like, oh, they're having this conversation over here, they're having this conversation over here, they're having this conversation over here. There is something like really kind of cool and interesting about that.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I mean, to the extent that people want more influence in the protocol, there are pretty strong incentives to build a really powerful Rocco, because that would be that would give you a lot of kind of power in the system, right? To be the one that is kind of like choosing how things propagate between the nodes, and eventually we'll probably see like even a plurality of those sorts of things.
Love it. One thing I'll say, regardless of everything else I've always said about nouns, it's interesting, and we're going to keep it interesting, and we're going to keep experimenting. So, I have a lot of mixed feelings about all of these things, but I trust that this community is going to figure out awesome solutions and hopefully spin up better versions of communication for ourselves and all that. So it's cool.
And I'm not going to leave any of you alone. I'm going to GM you every morning by DM. So sorry about that, but sorry, not sorry.
Solid. Perfect. Sounds like a plan.
It just occurred to me, this is kind of something, but it just occurred to me, like, because I've often viewed Nouns DAO as like a living organism and try to see the parallels between nature and evolution in ways, and seeing this process now is kind of forcing the next layer of complexity to happen sooner. Like it's spreading out. It's kind of like cellular growth in creating that fractal. So all of these different sub DAOs become the main DAOs instead of sub DAOs. You know what I mean? It's like these
an evolutionary bottleneck, I guess, in your metaphor.
Oh, sorry. What was
or
that?
at least shedding the skin.
I said it's like an evolutionary bottleneck in your metaphor.
Well, yeah,
absolutely,
exactly.
absolutely.
And it's going to allow the focus to grow a lot more on the sub DAOs, which means they just become the entities of their own based on the seed kind of thing. So it's just like further growth, and the fractal's just getting bigger.
I mean, I'm hopeful that, or I hope, I don't know if I'm hopeful yet, but that like what we're describing here really pertains primarily to the kind of social and communication layer, right? And then I think hopefully that's a bit of a forcing function to figure out how the kind of like the governance structure can follow that same trajectory. Like maybe it becomes a norm that every one of these DAOs like is made up of some manner of nounlets, or little nouns, or like I think we do have to, in the longer term, figure out a way to kind of distribute the collateral so that it's like a little bit symmetrical, at least to the distribution of these communities.
Yeah, in Ugly DAO we have our fuglets as well.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, Ugly DAO is a perfect example of that, right? Right. Ugly DAO is, I mean, whether or not it's a multi-sig or a DAO, it is its own sort of node in the system. And again, when you have an official space, one of the defining features of Ugly DAO is that it's not, that communication channel is not part of the official communication channel. But when you remove the official communication channel, the Ugly DAO gets elevated in a certain way, right? It is now equal to every other communication channel that happens in the space.
It's now officially ugly.
That's right. One final question for you, 41, from our Discord. Prof. Werder is asking, what is your big vision for Nouns, like 5, 10, 27 years down the road when there's 10K? What do you see as the big vision for Nouns?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
finishing with a softball question.
I think the biggest vision is that it sort of becomes the governance layer of the metaverse, right? That like all of these different communities in the very long term sort of like coordinate the activities of the Treasury, and it becomes a kind of like UN of the internet. And I think that would certainly be very cool. It may not kind of occupy every single vertical. But for the verticals that it does occupy, and hopefully kind of public goods funding and infrastructure building is one of those, it is, in some sense, its own kind of like, it's on the trajectory of being a kind of network state, or like a meta network state that is like, kind of the fabric that holds a bunch of these like specific Nouner states together. I think that's like the most exciting possible vision and the boldest one I can think of, at least right now.
I love that.
Do you have any like thoughts on it replacing existing governance systems IRL, whether that's nations or local governments and things like that? Because like I often just think of the parallels between like everything from local council to state government, national governments, and then the global coordination of all these governments. Like I feel like they could all utilize this technology to just do it better.
I mean, it's certainly possible. I think we probably have a lot of work to do before something like that is feasible. And I think it depends on a lot of factors kind of outside of the ecosystem as well. But, certainly I think we maybe can consider that a stretch goal.
Ready?
Yeah.
4, 1, 5, 6, 2, 4. President.
Shots fired at Nancy Pelosi. Watch out.
All right. I want to thank 4156 for taking the time to be with us today. Really appreciate you coming to give some clarity to those who had questions. And we look forward to this next chapter in Nouns. Thank you, sir.
Cheers. Thanks a lot for having me.
Just a couple small little housekeeping here before we wrap up. We do have to wrap up here shortly because we have a Prop House Spaces, Prop House Weekly, of course, every Monday at 2 p.m. EST. So right after this Spaces, we'll be jumping over to Prop House to chat and do a Shark Tank for the Agora delegate race. So that'll be fun. And if you're interested to hear pitches from almost all of the applicants who are trying to be delegates over there, come listen to that with us right after we're done here. One other piece here is just to talk about our soapboxes. Zargs, if you're there under Internationals, can you give us a quick rundown of just the soapboxes for today and tomorrow, please?
Speed, Zarg, speed.
Speed run, unless she's not there. That's okay. I can do it. So we do have the Little Noun Show, which I'm looking forward to on the Soapbox tonight at 6:30 p.m. EST. They've been doing some promos for that. They've got a special guest on, so definitely put that into your calendar for 6:30 this evening. And then, of course, we have at 8 p.m. the Milk and Cookies Show with Prof. Werder of Food Nouns, where they literally bake cookies live on the air with you. So that's always a fun one to catch. Tomorrow we have Shark DAO joining us on the Noun Square Soapbox at 12:30 p.m. With Joshua Fisher. Anything exciting happening there, Joshua, tomorrow?
Just nom nouns.
Nom nouns. You love to hear it. And then, of course, we've got Blooms in Season, another food Nouns Soapbox happening with Blooms as the host at 6 p.m. tomorrow. So that's the next 2 days in Soapbox. And a final note, which it makes sense going into our Prop House Spaces here right after, is do not forget that we have our inaugural Noun Square Prop House open right now to proposals. Any idea that will proliferate nouns and also will help to build out the platform and the network that we're building here at the Noun Square is a good idea to post in that Prop House. So just go to prop.house and then you select the Noun Square and you can propose right there until Wednesday at 6 p.m. EST. So time is running out and hope to see some good ideas in for that idea. And finally, last minute here, we've got a final POAP here from Ryan, and then we'll...
Here on 9 o'clock at the Noun Square, we do a daily POAP. POAP stands for Proof of Attendance Protocol. You can go to your phone's marketplace and download the POAP app or head over to poap.xyz. When you open the POAP app, in the bottom right corner, you click the Mint button. Then you hit the secret word tab. Today's POAP secret word is nuke that hoe. NUKETHATHOE.
Oh my
All
God.
lowercase, one
Ryan.
word. Nuke the Discord.
Ryan trying to get canceled here today, live on the Noun Square.
Well done.
All right,
You're
guys.
lucky you're lucky that Dad left, or you would be grounded right now.
He might be grounded anyway. I'm gonna tell him. I'm gonna tell Dad. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And today was obviously a bit more of a serious episode of 9 o'clock live. We promise tomorrow we'll have 100% more sound effects and terrible jokes. Okay,
We'll have 30 fart noises tomorrow. Don't worry.
No fart noises, just regular sound effects, like the Woody sound effects, the OGs. We need those air horns. You want to get high? Those ones will be coming back tomorrow. Thank you, everybody who joined us. We do this every day, by the way. We do this every day at 9 o'clock. We're going to do the Twitter picker. Someone's asking about it. We'll do it, then we'll tweet it out right after the spaces because we do have to watch numbers. Thank you, everybody who came out and everybody who participated, and we will see you guys back here tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
Noun Square.
Later, everybody.
Come on over with us to Prop House Spaces over on Prop House Weekly. I'll pin it here and then I'll head over there.
New rap song called Nuke That Hoe coming soon.
Good night, everybody.
There's the pin. I just pinned it up top. So if you want to join us over there, we're getting started in just a minute. Thanks, everyone.
Stop shilling, Toady.
I got a show for Prop House. It doesn't count if it's for Prop House. Play it out with a little treasure.